Welcome to Parenting Pioneers, the podcast where we journey through the vibrant communities of urban life, discovering the opportunities and challenges that await today's working parents. In a world that's changing faster than ever, how do we raise resilient, curious, and empowered kids? So whether you're navigating the digital playground, seeking local adventures, or striving for that ever-elusive work-life harmony, we're here to guide, inspire, and connect. I'm your host, David Watkins, and together we'll explore stories, strategies, and talk with experts that empower us to thrive in the parenting landscape. So parents, pioneers, let's find our way. We want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Plan My Kids. As busy parents, we all know the stress of trying to plan and organize activities for our kids. That's where Plan My Kids comes in. They make planning and attending kids' activities easy, offering personalized programs tailored to your family's interests and needs. So if you're feeling overwhelmed with planning kids' activities, let Plan My Kids take the wheel. Visit their website at planmykids.com and start your plan today. Remember, with Plan My Kids, you got this. And most importantly, your kids know this. Thanks again to Plan My Kids for their support of the podcast. In this heartfelt episode of Parenting Pioneers, I sit down with Chasta Hamilton, founder of Stage Door Dance Productions, to explore her journey from aspiring attorney to pioneering dance educator. Chasta shares the profound impact dance had on her during personal tragedies and how it fueled her mission to redefine dance education. The conversation delves into the therapeutic aspects of dance, the pitfalls of competitive culture, and Chasta's innovative approach to fostering community, leadership, and philanthropy through dance. Listeners will be inspired by Chasta's dedication to creating a more inclusive, supportive, and empowering environment for both students and parents in the arts. So, let's find our way with Chasta. Well, hello, Chasta. How are you today? I'm so glad you could join us on the podcast.
Good morning, David. Thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. So just to help the audience, can you just tell me a little bit about your journey and what motivated you to open your dance studio?
Sure. So this is the super short, condensed version. I grew up in East Tennessee. I received the Park Scholarship, which is a full academic scholarship at NC State. So came to Raleigh to go to college. And when I arrived at NC State, thought I needed to do something scholarly, which I didn't think necessarily the arts were, that was a falsity. That was a false assumption on my behalf and maybe on society's behalf a little bit too. And started pursuing what I thought would be a career in law. In my sophomore year of undergrad, I did an internship with the Attorney General of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, and absolutely hated it. So decided that just was not going to be a career fit for me. And I had started doing some freelance teaching and choreography and really loved it. So I felt like I could do dance studios. And when we started, I just wanted to be good. And there was a checklist of what good looked like. But then a few years in, I was like, I feel like this could be better. I feel like it could be a lot better and that it could serve people the same way dance education served me in my childhood. I had some childhood trauma. I lost both of my parents in my childhood, and dance was just always there for me. It helped me cultivate my voice, my authenticity, my leadership. So I wanted to put that back, and we sort of redefined what dance studios could look like, what a youth extracurricular could look like. And at the heart of that, it's really like what humanity could look like. So, from there, it's evolved into different books and speaking and just this constant reconceptualization of what can dance education be and how can it serve society where it's at.
Yeah, wow. So I'm sorry to hear about your parents. That's certainly tragic. I want you to go back a little bit to when you were that child, and you talked about how dance sort of helped you. Like, in what ways did you find that find it to be therapeutic?
Yeah, so it's the arts when they're in their most organic form. are an outlet for catharsis, which is something that every human needs. We need to be able to process our stories, to hear other stories, to apply those stories. And I think it's that combination of catharsis and play that really packaged together allowed me not to allow my circumstances to define me, but to motivate me. And to then say, well, how can I use this as a tool? Because hardship is something that we all experience in whatever shade we experience it. It may not be at the same time or the same place or in the same process of our lives, but we are all going to have something that we have to overcome in our story. So how can we use extracurriculars and art to help us say, you can do this, right? Like this is a part of who you are.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Great. So in dance, and looking at this from an outsider's perspective, because dancing wasn't one of the things that I did, although people say I'm a good dancer. It seems like there's a little bit of a stereotype, especially me growing up. I mean, sort of tangential to this, it was sort of the pageants, that were out there, or gymnastics. And I think I would say dance kind of falls into that. There seems to be a lot of competition. So how, in your journey, did you sort of not fall into that trap? And because it can be a double-edged sword. And so, how did you balance it?
Fall into the trap, actually. Like we were in the trap.
Yeah.
And this is a thing that I reflect on and that I think about a lot is when you're looking at dance education and kind of the dance competition pageantry piece, like dance education has really existed since the beginning of civilization, right? Dance and ceremonious elements, or in the way cultures come together, like dance is inherent to our being. And we've tried to like box it in and package it along the way. And I think some of the ways that we've done that aren't effective and aren't working. But when I opened the dance studios, participating in dance competitions was something that a good studio historically did in the private sector.
So it was on your list of good
things. It was
things.
on the list. Yes.
Okay.
Hire a great staff, get a lot of students, be great at competitions. And I competed in my middle and high school years on a much smaller scale from what this market and model has morphed into. But we were competing and we were successful. And around that time, I was waking up, I was breaking out in hives. The studio didn't feel joyful. It didn't have that happiness. It didn't have that power that I had sensed in my childhood. And I knew that we had veered off course. And it was this moment where I basically said, something has to change. Either I'm not cut out for this industry or I need to change the industry. And I guess I was just feeling up for the challenge because we decided we wanted to change the industry, and we extracted the studios from competitive dance, completely rebranded, labeled our 4 pillars as technique, performance, community, and character, and started looking at this from an institutional perspective of how can everything fall into this. We established our tagline, be more at stage door. So how is this training and this program a personal call to elevation, not only in the dance sense, but where you may go above and beyond your time at the dance studio? And it's been very powerful. And every year thereafter, it's like you mentioned the gender stereotypes. We keep saying, what are undoings that we can continue to address, that we can continue to improve? Because I always, I say, when we know better, we do better. And I think we're starting to recognize that just because things are a certain way doesn't mean that we have to subscribe to them, and that we can reconceptualize what great looks like.
Yeah, totally. So I think competition fundamentally isn't a bad thing. I think it teaches some skills for so many things we do in our life are competitive, in our jobs.
Living in itself is competitive.
Living itself, right. Yeah. And certainly then I felt like there was like this overshift a little bit at some point in my life where it seemed like, okay, we're going to drop the competitiveness and we're going to over rotate to this sort of, you get a participation award. Right. So, striking that balance seems to be the trick, right? How do you still foster a little bit of competition, but not hey, if you don't win, it's okay. It's a building block, right?
Yeah. And, you have to say, like, what is the value of the win? What's the return on investment? And with an art like dance, you're basically, it's a pay to play environment. For example, some places a solo can cost upwards of $280 for 3 minutes on stage. And then the adjudicators, it's biased, right? Because it's not soccer, it's not basketball. You're not having a tangible score or metric that says this is a win or this is a loss. So how do you explain winning or losing when on two different weekends, depending on the eyes on the routine, it could be totally different. And for that cost piece, that's where we were kind of like, we can't continue to endorse this expense um, for the ROI that's given. But like you're saying, competition, the competitive spirit, that's so important to develop and to cultivate and to also teach that adaptability, resilience, perseverance. But whatever the extracurricular space is, you have to say, what is this actually teaching? And if funds are directed towards it, how is that working? And like you're saying, that's something that was important to us. So when we reconceptualized what heightened dance training could look like, we created an intensive training program, which has since evolved into our Be More Performance Ensemble. And their competitive component is a philanthropic initiative. So they pick local nonprofits, they have to pitch them, they select them, they do the marketing, the elevator pitches, they raise the funds, and then at the end of each spring, they produce a show where they do all of their dances, and we have guest artists, and it's just a great celebration. And between 2017 through 2023, they've already raised over $100,000 of youth-driven fundraising.
I love that. That is so great to combine these two things. That is wonderful. Congratulations on that.
And the competitive spirit is so healthy and alive in that collaborative community sense. So that's what I always say, like, people, because when people are asked, why do you do dance competitions? Most of the time it's because they love to perform. They love the sense of community and camaraderie. Well, then if you can actually instill a little bit of competition into that, competition for the greater good, right? Like art to serve a higher purpose, then you're activating leadership. Like, these dancers are understanding they can change the world through their art. And it becomes so much bigger than the self. And I think that in the long run is really powerful.
Yeah. And you talk about that sort of sense of community. There's community, like literally the community wherever you live, but I think there's also this sort of bonds of friendship, right? That these kids are going to create that because they're doing these things together. They have common goals. And so we talked a little bit about the children and sort of their experiences, but parents play a big role in this obviously as well. And I think as parents, sometimes we sort of follow a template of what we think our children should be doing and what they should participate in. And sometimes we can maybe even unknowingly push false expectations for the kids or setting them down the path that isn't healthy. So as a parent, if I guess the first thing I would ask is, how should a parent approach their kids' activities and sort of guiding them and supporting them in healthy ways?
Right. I love that question because we've had the studios for 15 years. So we have seen like a solid cohort of ages 2 to 18 kind of come through in that decade and a half. And now as a mom to a 2.5-year-old myself, I think there's just, education is so important, right? And a strong extracurricular values the relationship of the parent, the participant, and the studio. It's a trifecta. And I think there has to be this, a lot of times I feel like extracurriculars view clients as adversaries instead of allies. But if we all work together to a common goal or a common cause, knowing that child's success and their best interest is the priority, then it's a win and it's a good fit. Now, everybody has what they're looking for their child, potentially. If you're not, I think exploring is really important. I think it's good that you do back-end research on whatever organization maybe you're looking to be a part of. I always recommend exploring the organization. We always offer complimentary trial classes because we want to immerse a prospective family into the environment that it currently exists to make sure that they feel like that's going to be a great fit for their family. We also offer complete transparency because we want the experience to be an open book. So we have a system called Spot TV, which allows parents to view classes via their devices at any time that the child is in class. So what's great about that is it provides the balance of an independent extracurricular experience where the child is building confidence, leadership, sense of self, but the parent gets to be a part of that process too, because they're actively seeing the child in the classroom as they wish to check in. We also have closed buildings. So our buildings are only open to students, staff, and scheduled guests because that enables us to focus fully on the child participant. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that is the client. That's the person that we're here to serve. The parent is a representative of that child. So we all have to work together. But those are just a couple of different ways that we've said, okay, how can we build this bridge? And for us, we have to educate a lot because we're doing things differently from the standard model. I think a lot of times parents underestimate that it's okay to advocate for their child. Like we want to know learning styles. We want to know things that we can do to make your experience better. Any extracurricular should have the mentality of, yes, we are here to help your child succeed, not you're coming in and we're indoctrinating you to a standard. Like we have a very whole child approach. Like we want to meet the child where they are, and then we want them to excel based on that. And I think some traps that parents can fall into in regards to extracurriculars that can be dangerous can be comparison, right? We talk about this a lot, but toxic achievement culture is a big thing, and every child is on their own journey. They can also sometimes come in with a sense of entitlement, not entitlement necessarily from a place of malice, but maybe just a lack of understanding that there's a macro vision that is tailored to address hundreds while we want to serve the one. Policy exemptions and exceptions. I always recommend parents read the literature for programs because that's going to help you know if that works for your family or not. And transparency, right? Like we're going to be transparent. You want to look for institutions that are transparent. Transparency is so key and so important.
Yeah. And it's great that you provide that transparency and the ability to basically try the service, because at the end of the day, something like dance or martial arts, like it's a journey. Like you're in it for a while if that's what you enjoy doing. And so making sure that you're on the right track is so important. And now I have a feeling that your program is pretty good at identifying this, but let's say even, parents, they do their research, they think they found the right place, but what if their child is just ultra competitive, right? And they're in the program and so what are the things that parents could look for in their children if they're like, wait a second, you're over rotating on the competitive side of this versus the holistic approach?
Yeah. So I think family conversation debriefs after extracurricular is so important, not only when it's like game time or show time, but after those everyday practices or rehearsals. What are you learning? What made you smile? What made you feel frustrated? Having those conversations, because that's also going to bring attention to an attitude shift much faster than seeing an explosion or an emotional outburst during a more stressful circumstance like a show time or a game time. So being proactive and really staying engaged in what's happening. For us, we do in-studio observation several times per year too. So we always say how important that is to the children to have the parents in the classroom because it gets to see them in action. And I always say, like, if a student comes to me, so like we were talking earlier, competitive mindset is not a bad thing, right? And sometimes there are students that are craving more. And I always applaud when they're able to verbalize what they're looking for. I want to be challenged in this way. What additional experiences do you think would be a great fit for me? Having those collaborative conversations from a really good place of personal growth, that's important. Now, the red flag is when you're putting someone else down in order to make yourself feel better, because then you're not focused on self growth. You're looking around the room and you're worried about other people instead of your progress. And I think, as we're sort of talking about what does it mean to win, it's so important that these programs are putting focus on the process over the product and intrinsic motivation over extrinsic motivation.
Totally.
Because we want to train participants to be able to wake up every day and say, I want to live today with excellence, versus like living for that day when maybe they're going to get an award or a trophy that may or may not represent self-worth.
Right. Makes sense. And yeah, we actually had a discussion about perfectionism in kids. And so I think you mentioned comparison, and that's like one of the ways in which perfectionism can kind of creep into the competitive nature. It's like you're trying so hard to get it just right, which can lead to its own sort of mental health issues.
Burnout. We're seeing a lot of burnout, a lot of fatigue. I think mental wellness is a huge priority, right? Because you can't excel in an extracurricular if you're not mentally well. And watching out for, red flags, anxiety, change in mood, just even overextended bandwidth, right? There's this old school mentality of if you're not all in, then you're not a highest achiever in the institution. But I think we can flip the narrative on what that looks like. Like dance should still be a part of a story, even if it comes and goes, depending on the circumstances of the semester or the year or the season of life. Because dance is bigger and better than that. And I think extracurriculars, we need to have grace. We need to have grace for what our participants are experiencing in a larger sense right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You mentioned entitlement, like, or really that, some kids are going to come with different perspectives from different backgrounds. So how do programs ensure that children from all backgrounds are welcomed and valued in the arts?
Yeah. So I think, it requires so much intentionality of saying, we need to see every child in this room. We need to make sure that we are so clear with parents coming in, because this is what I learned in our early years. Like I've been dancing since I was 2, so dance feels very second nature to me. But if you haven't been a part of dance or dance education and you come into a dance studio, it probably feels about as foreign as the 3 weeks I spent taking a Russian class at NC State. It just feels very unfamiliar. So as institutions, it's our job to say, let us help you understand what it is we're doing. Why do we have a year-end performance? Why do we have a 30-day withdrawal policy if you need to leave the program? How do we spell all of that out? How do we make sure that there are systems in place that we can show acknowledgement? Or are we offering enough trainings in different styles? Like for the year-end performance, we have a packet that you can read. We have a training video, so that however we have in-person sessions. So however you learn best, we're going to meet you where you're at. And I think that creates just a healthier, happier, more copacetic environment.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And I think, especially in this day and age, I just feel like, diversity is a strength. I mean, any corporate environment you're in they'll certainly encourage that. And it starts at a young age, right? Like you're going to learn so much from, people who may be different, may have different opinions, may come from different backgrounds, but they all are part of this
ecosystem.
This ecosystem, that we have.
It's really about belonging, right? Like how are we creating a space that encourages belonging? And that's really a focus as we're strategizing and planning for upcoming season. We're thinking about cracks or, maybe blind spots that we've had in that system of how can we make sure that wherever you're coming from, whatever background, when you're here and you're dancing, you belong. For example, we work with a lot of costume vendors, and in terms of like color options for skin tone colors and costumes for, male identifying dancers, like it is a deficit. And it's also, so how can we use our voice as an established institution to say, okay, we know this is how it's always been, but as an institution, we are really needing to see more progress.
Wow.
And how can we support people that are also leaning in to making that progress and change? Because it's very small things that matter.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I didn't even really think about the costume. I mean, I think about today and your choices in using, a thumbs up emoji now. Like it comes in different skin colors. Like it's no different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That full adventure. But it is a conversation of, when you know better, you do better.
Right.
And for the boys, it's like, why is the only costume option 20 sparkle vest? Like, why can't they be styled in a similar way?
Yeah.
So
I do find that in my own review of different dance programs, that they definitely are heavily marketed towards young girls. And if I am trying to help a parent who has a boy, it's like, well, I don't know if they're going to feel comfortable going there, because all the images on their website are all girls, and I'm like, maybe he'll feel a little.
It's not unwarranted, and it's even something that we've discussed. And I didn't grow up, it was predominantly I danced with a lot of girls in East Tennessee, and when I came here, we did have all of these boys signing up, and it was a learning flex for me. And many of those boys have been wildly successful in their careers, ranging from professional work to non-professional. And I think there's a conversation, and there's so much work to do, but we're going to be doing it.
Awesome. Great. So for parents, like in general, if they're looking for a program for their child, specifically in dance, like what are sort of your top tips for parents to look out for, whether it be philosophies for the program or the qualities in the studio?
So first, I think it's really important that parents seek healthy over harmful dance. There's this huge conversation happening about dance programs, making sure that everything for children is age appropriate, ranging from music to costuming to movement. And I think that's really important, because our children only get one childhood, and I think that we should be protecting that at any cost. So that's step one, healthy over harmful dance. And then two, I think you find something that fits your family's needs, right? Do you need something more flexible? Are you looking for something more rigid? Your needs, and it's out there. And I think it's important as institutions that we be flexible in making sure that we're creating the culture that we want. Like, I know who our ideal client is, and I know there are people that maybe are looking for something that's not what we offer, and that's okay. And we're always happy to recommend them to those places that do exist. So I also think when you're looking for institutions, that you need to make sure that they know their identity, right? There's a lot of template-driven extracurricular models that exist of people that are buying a package or buying a program, and it's not authentic. Like, it's not a true voice. And I think you're always going to get more when you find something that really knows who they are and what their purpose is in having this institution and training. And then I also encourage parents to not underestimate the power of an extracurricular activity. While your child may not go on to pursue it in a quote unquote professional sense, the values that they can learn, especially if the institution intentionally instills those in their curriculums, they're going to last forever. And that's executive functioning, that's confidence, leadership, teamwork, self-worth, all of these great things that they can take with them, whether they go to Broadway or whether they're sitting in a boardroom. It's going to last them a long time.
Yeah, great advice for parents. Awesome. So, are there any upcoming projects that you're working on right now that you're excited about?
Yeah, I have a few things that I'm super excited about. I've started doing over the past few years, I've been dipping out into the corporate world a little more for corporate speaking. And what I love is that adults are now recognizing the power of play as it relates to authenticity and vulnerability and power in business. So it's been really, enlightening and exciting for me to see what we're doing here with children is also being applied to some of the largest corporations in the world. And then I'm also super excited because I'm releasing my first children's book, which is a growth-minded primer. It's called The Trophy Trap, Unleash Your Inner Winner. And it's about 6 dogs at a dog show. They all have different activities and they all have to learn, how to process wins and loss and how we choose to live each and every day. And I'm hoping that'll be out late spring 2024.
Oh, that sounds like a fun book. I can't wait to read it. So before I let you go today, I have a question that I like to ask my guests, and it is, if you could grant a superpower to parents, what would it be?
It's a great question. I think I would grant parents the power of presence as their superpower. Because I think when we are watching children as they go through every year, and I have a unique lens into this as, we have ages 2 to 18 here and have been open 15 years. So I've now really watched that first 2-year-old turn into a graduating senior. And I just think being present and listening to their stories, learning from what they have to share. A lot of times people will say, well, what can a 2-year-old even do? And my answer back to them is you would be amazed at what a 2-year-old can do when they have someone that believes that they can do it. So being present and offering praise, offering conversation, offering visibility, I think it's a very achievable superpower.
Yeah.
But it's one that sometimes we forget.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that superpower is definitely achievable. I think if parents just put their mind to it and be present.
Yeah. There's
Right.
a lot of noise, so it's hard.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's great.
We can do it. I try to hold myself more accountable to it as well.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, Chasta, for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it and loved hearing your story, your journey, and really how you're trying to reshape, the concept of extracurricular activities and the art forms into something that's more holistic for kids and their families. That's great.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation.
As we wrap up today's enlightening conversation with Chasta, we are reminded of the power of dance, not just as an art form, but as a vehicle for personal growth, healing, and community building. Her journey from a young girl with a dream to the founder of Stage Door Dance Productions is a testament to the impact one person can have when they follow their passion. A huge thank you to Chasta for joining us today and sharing her inspiring story and invaluable insights. Her dedication to redefining dance education and empowering the next generation through leadership, philanthropy, and inclusivity is truly pioneering. If today's episode moved you, we encourage you to learn more about Chasta's work and consider how the arts can play a role in your child's life. And remember, whether it's dance or any other passion, encouraging your child to explore their interests can lead to profound personal development and joy. Don't forget to subscribe to Parenting Pioneers to stay updated on our latest episodes. Share this podcast with fellow parents who might find encouragement and inspiration in our community stories. Your support helps us reach more parents like you, dedicated to nurturing and empowering their children. And with that, we sign off with a heartfelt thank you for sharing a moment with us. We look forward to the next one. Until then, go and be the best parent you can be. We're rooting for you.